Recently, I've found myself wondering about Skyrim's longevity in the video game scene. It's an old joke at this point, but here we are in 2018 and Skyrim is still something I see pop up into my various feeds pretty frequently. It's rather odd to me considering that every time a new and better version of Skyrim is announced, all I hear and see are memes, jokes, and general complaining about the decision to release yet another adaptation of everyone's favorite 2011 masterpiece. It's gotten to the point where I've found myself thinking about the game that was released before Skyrim. Not that one. No, almost there. That's the one. Well, close enough. Yes, Oblivion. While not my very first Elder Scrolls game, it's definitely the one that I sunk the most time into, and the one that I remember most fondly. Watching the amount of love that Skyrim gets from Bethesda, which may or may not be because of the money it brings in, got me wondering if I've been holding Oblivion on a higher pedestal due to nostalgia, or if it was really as good as I remembered it being. After all, the last time I really played Oblivion was about 8 years ago, before Skyrim's first release. So I downloaded Oblivion in its unmodded state and began to play through the game with a fresh perspective. I realize this is a 12-year-old game now, so I'm not really going to rag on its various bugs or graphics too much, but I will be basing my analysis on how much fun I have overall with the game and its quest lines, and present my evaluation based off of my own feelings and standards for how things should or shouldn't play out. I will not be including the Shivering Isles, because my script is already 12 pages long without it. Just know that the Shivering Isles are very fun and a welcome addition to the game. Let's take it from the top. You have zero idea how much this song excites me. Anyways. You start in a cell because every Elder Scrolls game needs you to be a prisoner, except Daggerfall. Emperor needs to use the secret escape tunnel that's hidden in your cell for some reason, and then realizes you're pretty cool.
You are the one from my dreams.
So you tutorial your way through the sewers and wind up making your class after watching the Emperor die before your own eyes. Even for its time, this is a pretty cookie-cutter start as far as beginnings go. But the class creation is actually where my interest in the game started to pick up again. I love this type of character creation, and I miss it in a lot of modern-day action RPGs. It's a very old-school, pen-and-paper type of creation, where I can make something semi-unique while still being able to train and dabble in all the other skills on the list. I will say it's not perfect in my opinion. I think not getting any XP for leveling minor skills isn't a good mechanic. But I also think that if the minor skills did give XP, then 7 major skills would be too many. The problem here is that it takes 10 increases in any major skill to level up. And I could go on about this system for a long time, so let's just move on from it. After crawling through the sewers and being bombarded with 1,000 quests, you're now free to go wherever you please. I started with trying to work my way into the Blades. This entire part of the quest line was never memorable to me. I vaguely recalled the bit about Martin being the son of the king, but I did remember Kvatch pretty well.
They say he actually went into an Oblivion Gate and destroyed it.
After all, it's where the first gate to Oblivion is located. These hell portals still do an amazing job of creeping me out in a way that I did not expect. It's really a testament to how well the concept of Oblivion Gates were done in this game. When I'm expecting the gate to be there, and it still sends shivers down my spine, that's an extremely well done experience. I mean, think about it. These gates could have easily been shrines or pedestals that have no weather or sound effects. You touch them and then you just get transported into hell and that's the experience. Instead, you're traveling around Cyrodiil and suddenly the sky goes dark and this massive red portal is looming in the middle of the woods and you were just looking for a bear cave for your bear quest and now you're wondering how this all went wrong. This kind of experience is something that's extraordinarily unique to Oblivion, and I very much love the emotion that the outside of these portals evoke. The inside of them is a different story. Yes, walking into your first portal is a pretty awesome experience. The contrast between the hellish wastes of Oblivion is a tremendous leap from Cyrodiil's rolling hills and flowing rivers, but the actual gameplay experience is lackluster at best. Once you get over the change in scenery, Oblivion Gates become one of the most stale and boring challenges in the entire game. The randomly appearing gates come in 7 different variations, but all of them have the same flavor of giving you the runaround treatment while you try your damnedest to make it to the sigil stone and close the portal. Here's a breakdown of one of the gates that I did clear. Alright, you start with these 3 towers to choose from. One's closed off by lava, so choose one of the other 2. Both are wrong. Walk in and admire the blazing fire and body rain, Head upstairs, fighting off various roving gangs of Darth Mauls, until you make it to this bridge that makes it easier to get to the ground.
Oh!
Reload your save, go back inside, and go up more stairs until you get to the Blood Fountain. Then wait for an hour, negating the usefulness of the Blood Fountain. Go up more winding ramps until you get to the top where you meet the toughest enemy in the entire gate, this Triceratops. You then pull this lever and ask yourself where's the other lever, spoiler alert, the other tower. So you make your way back down One World Trade Center and across to its twin in the hopes that the lever is for some reason at the entrance. It isn't, it's just another charging chuck and its patented ability of jumping in the air and clapping 3/4 of your health away. Continue up and come to the realization that a German engineer has laced this tower with bouncing betties and continue to mash T in the hopes that enemies won't be nearby. Make your way all the way up this tower, pull the lever, go out the door just in time to watch the bridge retracting and wonder if you did this whole thing wrong. Tell yourself you didn't to help yourself feel better and then hop down to the new tower, fight more demons. Finally, defeat this guy and take the dark sign from the altar. Immediately regret standing too close to the erupting volcano. This time, secure the dark matter and back a safe 10 feet away from the sunbeam. Weep gently as you realize that you need to do this 7 more times if you want to complete the Allies for Bruma quest. I realize I tend to blow things out of proportion, but I really don't know how else to stress that I spent around 40 minutes doing the same thing multiple times. I don't mind if I spend 40 minutes doing something that's unique and fun and keeps my interest. I do mind it when I get done with the quest and I look at the clock and I go, wow, I spent a lot of time on that. It sucks because on one hand I do enjoy the idea that all hell is literally breaking loose, but that joy is soured when I remember what it's like to clear one of these many gates. It's the patented Bethesda maneuver of quantity over quality that's later echoed in Skyrim and Fallout 4's Radiant quest systems. I'd have loved it if there were 9 Oblivion Gates representative of the 9 circles of hell, or something similar to that sentiment, but the trade-off there would be the lack of gates resulting in the world feeling a lot less invaded. But let's move away from that. Let's talk about guilds. Guilds in Oblivion were my absolute favorite part of the game when I played through it before. So naturally, when I began to replay the game, it wasn't long before I strayed from the main quest line to start delving into the various guilds that I found in Cyrodiil. My first guild of choice was the Arena, which I honestly didn't have high expectations for. I remember it being a big fighting pit, and that's about it. After my initiation of being told that I was going to die about 20 different ways...
You what? You want to be a combatant? All right. It's your funeral. When you're ready to get eviscerated, just head up the ramp to the arena.
I began to ascend the ranks, and surprisingly, I was having a blast. The daunting, almost eerie, blood-soaked hallway that leads up from the Red Room was something I hadn't appreciated before. And even though the crowds were sparse due to graphical limitations, I absolutely loved it, and I didn't realize it immediately, but I eventually remembered that the arena was usually something that I didn't mess with until I was much more geared out. Going into it with a lower level and a small arsenal made the arena a lot more challenging to tackle than I remembered it being. It got to the point where I was chugging potions and backing off a lot to try to win, but when I did win, it really felt like I had accomplished something. Plus the stats I was leveling was a nice bonus. After I had made a fair amount of progress in the arena, I moved on to the Thieves Guild. This was another guild that I had very fond memories for and was pretty excited about starting it. In order to become initiated in the guild though, you have to bribe or persuade your way into the good graces of a beggar. This is where the Persuasion Minigame comes into play. I remembered the minigame existing, but I didn't remember the full extent of its frequency until I started doing Thieves Guild quests. If you want information, persuasion. If you want to convince someone to believe you, persuasion. If you want better prices for the stuff you steal, you guessed it, persuasion. The minigame isn't inherently awful, but it does get tedious when every person requires persuading. It's something that I'm happy about being removed in Skyrim. After you get initiated into the guild, your doyen tells you to steal things. That's it, and it's wonderful. You make your own kleptomaniacal missions, casing the joints that you want to hit, waiting until nightfall, and pilfering the riches of everyone in the merchant district. I had a lot of fun with this and easily made 1,000+ gold overnight. It was so easy that I was a bit let down by the special mission requirements. You see, in order to advance in the guild, you have to do missions that only unlock after you've fenced a certain amount of gold's worth of items. The first mission requires 50, the second is 100, and then the increments increase 100 at a time, excluding 900, until you get to the final mission of the Thieves Guild, which requires 1,000 gold worth of items fenced. I understand that I can continue to rob places as I deem fit, but it really takes the wind out of my sails when I blow through the entirety of the special mission requirements after hitting 2 shops in the same night. It's a minor complaint, but I feel like it was worth noting. Now, as far as the actual Thieves Guild special missions go, I did have a bit of fun with them, but not as much as I remembered having when I first played. Sure, I enjoyed planting evidence on a double-crosser in the guild and busting into the Arcane University to manipulate them into helping out, but I kept hoping for more unique endeavors to crop up. The first 2/3 of these missions consist of playing pranks on Hieronymus Lex and obtaining random items for people.
This is outrageous! The Grey Fox had a hand in this! I know it!
After all these years, he's finally won.
After a while, you finally get to meet the man in charge, the Grey Fox. Now, I played this game when I was a lot younger, and I remember the Grey Fox being a cool and mysterious vigilante who I really liked as a character. But when I finally encountered him, he was a bit more underwhelming than I recalled. And if I'm going to be completely honest, the mask looks a bit ridiculous. But either way, he proceeds to give you a mission to retrieve a particular stone at a temple.
The blind monks in the catacombs guard the stone.
Okay, I'll show you, but only because you are my dear friend.
Please be discreet and don't bother the other monks.
Which leads into a sprawling underground cave. Let's take a time out here to talk about the cave systems in this game. They aren't good. They're boring. They're uninspired. They make me sigh and mash forward as fast as I can to get them over with. I understand that they're required in games like these. I don't just dislike caves. I do dislike Oblivion caves. Every cave in this game seems to me like some kind of generic copy and pasted layout of mediocrity. And the only thing that separates these caves from me are how much I'm invested in whichever quest I'm on. This guy wants me to retrieve a ruby dagger that slowly drains my life and causes my vision to go black and white because the ghost of a famous vampire is haunting him after he desecrated his grave. Point me to the cave, I'm doing this thing gladly. Some peasant wants me to save his prego daughter at the center of a cave. I'll pay you for a new daughter because I really don't want to go into that boring cave. Now, all that being said, the last missions for the Thieves Guild were a lot more thought out. First, I had to retrieve an arrow from a grotto which housed a giant underwater boss and led to a wizard tower. I was a bit aggravated at first when I saw the hidden entrance in a castle led to a cave system, but this one was actually quite a bit of fun to sneak around and explore. Next, I had to retrieve some boots that were in a cave, but it was a small cave, so no big deal. The Boots of Spring Hill Jack was actually one of my favorite quests so far, just because of the misdirection. You shake down an Earl who's supposed to be a descendant of Spring Hill Jack, who then directs you to a cave that's under his house. And once you find the coffin, there's only a diary. After thumbing through this diary, you find out that the man who wrote it was a vampire who lived for decades and decades. When you finally get to the end, you find out that the Earl that you shook down is Spring Hill Jack.
I am a vampire, a lord of blood.
That's the kind of cave narrative I can get behind. Finally, you're given your final mission to go through a catacomb system and solve some mysteries and stuff. I don't know, this mission felt really underwhelming to me. Your task was stealing an Elder Scroll, which is an awesome heist to pull off. And while the catacombs did feel a bit more unique as far as the layout went, they also felt very much the same. You're inside a dark, grayish dungeon with the same aesthetics and type of undead enemies. I actually had a lot more fun sneaking through the Imperial Palace and the library where the scroll was housed than the catacombs. I know I tend to gripe a lot about small things, but I really felt like the mission involving a security of an Elder Scroll, the thing that these games are prefaced with, should have been something really unique and inspired. I'm talking a gigantic sprawling library with moving bookshelves and automated knights that patrol. I'm talking trapped rooms that players have to skirt or figure out ahead of time via clues. Stuff like that, you know? Maybe I'm too picky. But either way, after you steal the scroll and escape, you make your way back to the Grey Fox, who pats you on the back and asks you for one final favor. I don't want to go into an extraordinary amount of detail, but the mission ends with you becoming the Grey Fox, with the Elder Scrolls magic used to lift the curse that comes with the title's hood. It's a cool ending to the story of the Thieves Guild, but I definitely feel like that it could have been executed a little better. The story is a little too convenient for my tastes and overlooks quite a few things. Either way, it's hard not to feel a sense of accomplishment when you retire to the guild hall and look through the things that you helped achieve.
It's the Grey Fox! I can't believe it's really you!
After my excursion through the Thieves Guild, I made the executive decision of killing an innocent person, which is an amazing requirement to be contacted by a representative of the Dark Brotherhood.
Named Rufio. Kill him, and your initiation into the Dark Brotherhood will be complete.
After this contact occurred, my string of intricate assassinations began. This was the only guild in the game where I could not help but do mission after mission. One could argue that the quests are nothing more than the usual objectives in the game, but it's the flavor of these quests that really enraptured me. Assassinate a guy and make it look like an accident. Pretend to kill someone with a poisoned blade and administer the antidote afterwards. A mansion murder party where you're trying to kill everyone else without the other guests catching on.
So, that's it. It's down to you and me. I know I'm no killer.
Yeah!
So...
These quests breathe so much life into the game for me, and the way they're handled is about as good as I can ask of a game, especially one from 2006.
Now listen up. Skooma. You know what that is? Get me some skooma.
After doing a set amount of missions from the Brotherhood and acquainting yourself with your new family, you're promptly ordered by your recruiter to exterminate everyone in your sect of the Brotherhood. It's a moment that I hadn't forgotten since I first played Oblivion, and I completely adored revisiting it. Upon the completion of this purification, you are promoted to a member of the Black Hand, and are given several dead drop quests to take care of, in which you are directed to notes that are hidden all over Cyrodiil. I initially thought I wasn't going to enjoy this part as much, but the dead drops actually streamlined the game really efficiently, and the quests didn't let up in creative ways to kill people. The first one involves a necromancer in a cave, which sounds super generic until you stumble upon his research. This research details that he is currently in the process of transferring his life force into an item in the hopes of becoming a lich, and that if the item is lost from his person, he will die. And just in case you thought the Black Hand might be doing good things for once, your next assassination target is a whole family of people that you are told to exterminate one by one.
What's going on?
Thanks again, and have a wonderful stay. Yeah.
I felt like a total monster, and I loved every second of it. The sheer amount of fun that I derived from this questline made me really begin to take my time and savor these quests. I was no longer rushing in to get things done, but found myself beginning to roleplay along with the creative ways of killing people. Killing a master of hand-to-hand combat with my fists. Breaking into the house of a merchant to replace all of his food and drink with mead that he's allergic to and poisoned apples. I was even beginning to search around my victims' homes to see if I could glean some sort of information as to why they were being targeted the way that they were. All of my targets began to get more paranoid over time. A lot of them were expecting fights, a lot of them were attacking on sight. I had found some Black Hand robes in a locked keg at one victim's house, but I still couldn't quite figure...
Oh, no! I'm too late. I thought I could get here in time. Thought I could stop you! You have been systematically killing off all of the members of the Black Hand.
It all finally clicked. I had been slaying my own comrades without knowing it, and now it was time for revenge. So you track this traitor down to a lighthouse on the outskirts of town, and it is absolutely horrifying. In the cellar you find dog bodies, a sheep body, human bodies and body parts strewn everywhere, and a head on a plate simply named Mother's Head. I actually cringed in disgust upon seeing this, and read every page in the diary that was left behind. This is the only time that I have thoroughly flipped through every page in a book in this game or any Elder Scrolls game. It's the journal of an absolute lunatic who saw his mom's head lopped off when he was a child by Lucian LeChance. And so he seeks vengeance both by framing Lucian and by killing the Night Mother and therefore the Dark Brotherhood. This is so well done. Every page reads like a horror movie, with this psychopath droning on in rhymes, rants, and nonsense. I half expected him to be behind me by the time I was done reading it. After poring over this journal, it's time to formulate a plan with Lucian and extinguish the traitorous Black Hand member. But as it turns out, you're a bit too slow. This part of the story made me realize that I'm that idiot who would shout and go, "No, look, I have the journal here, it wasn't him!" Because that was my exact reaction, and I was waiting for the dialogue option to come up. After thinking it over, though, it makes way more sense to try to determine who's the traitor first. And if I would have tried to denounce someone right then, chances are that everyone would turn on me. It really says a lot about how good a storyline can be in a game like this when you look at the gruesome body of Lucian strung up on display and feel remorse and disgust. Realistically, this body is just a zombie model that can be found in innumerable places in the game. But when you attach a good story to it, it doesn't need to be a different model to make you feel genuine emotion towards it that you didn't feel before. The Dark Brotherhood concludes with all the members of the Black Hand meeting in the Tomb of the Night Mother. Upon her summoning, she points out that the traitor is still among the Black Hand, to which he reveals himself and begins attacking everyone. After he is slayed, you are recognized for the work you have done and how dedicated you've been to the Black Hand, becoming the new listener for the guild. It's so hard not to gush over this guild's questline, and I know I've done it a lot at this point. From start to finish, I'm in love with every part of it, and I have to say that this shining example isn't followed by any other part of this game, or most other Bethesda games in general. It's a rare example of everything going so right in a game like this. I'm happy that I somehow forgot some of the major plot points in it, because replaying and rediscovering these quests have been an absolute treat. And I hate that a major portion of this game is so drab in comparison. You look at everything this questline does so right and you ask yourself, why isn't more of the game like this? I really cannot stress enough that I feel like this is the epitome of what a game like this should be. There are very few shortcomings for the Dark Brotherhood, if any. The reason I've included it so soon in the list of guilds that I'm going on about, instead of saving the best for last, is to present to everyone my notion of what I think the golden standard of this game should be. It's downright hard to play through the other portions of this game and not complain after experiencing this questline. Speaking of complaining, let's move on to the last few guilds here.
Now go, and may Sithis help us all.
The Mages Guild in Oblivion is really where the whole experience of walking into a guild with no proper knowledge or qualifications stems from.
As long as you're not a wanted criminal, there's a place for you in the guild.
This is something that's made fun of relatively heavily in Skyrim as well, and takes a bit from your immersion when you're playing. I walked into a chapter of the Mages Guild with 38 restoration and approximately jack shit in every other school of magic. I did realize this and started to train up my Meek Destruction skill from 5 after receiving my first task, but overall this is something that I think Morrowind did very well that its sequel didn't. A lot of people hated the restrictions placed on the player when you were told that you needed to have a set amount of magical knowledge to proceed with the guild. But it honestly made more sense to me from a lore and immersion perspective when it was handled that way. But I digress. The first 7 or so quests in the Mages Guild in Oblivion was a hodgepodge of menial tasks that almost anybody could do. The general theme that kept recurring was that normally you're supposed to undergo tasks that show how amazing you are at whatever school of magic that particular branch of Mages Guild specializes in. This actually would have been a really cool concept if each branch made you show a bit of proficiency in each school, and had you perform a test or task based on that knowledge. For example, illusion could have been a test to see how well you could make it through a maze of enemies by charming them. Or conjuring could have been having enough knowledge to summon 3 different familiars, and then being able to defeat them as well. Instead, you're met with each branch telling you that their respective worlds are on fire and that no one can do anything about it, and you're the only one that can handle the very bleak and overall boring barrage of tasks.
He even stole her mage's staff. Perhaps he thinks it's amusing. Please, I'm in desperate need of help, and I think you're the only one that I can turn to.
I literally just walked through the door. I am a stranger to this person, and she goes, "Oh, by the way, one of our young mage boys stole the mage girl's staff. There's nothing we can do about it. You're our only hope." Are you kidding me? Why am I here? There is actually a point in these quests where you're tasked with retrieving a dangerous book by someone who used to be part of the Mages Guild. When you report this information, you're told to bring the book back to the Mages Guild instead. I chose to give it to the ex-member with the idea that I would steal it back, thus double the reward.
I'll be at the Grey Mare until I've finished my work. But please don't disturb me until...
Hello. You haven't seen my sons, have you? They went off into the forest.
I did this, and instead of having the option to lie, my only option was to tell the truth. The guy rightfully gets mad, but then I give the book back anyway, and he's like, alright, cool, here's your recommendation.
You will retrieve the book immediately. What do you want? Have you Finally, I shall see.
As soon as I said, hey, yeah, I gave the book away, then that should have been it. That should have been the end of the quest line. You know, reload a save or something. Or give me the option to lie, in which case you'd have to have some sort of lying personality system like Fallout. It really is a shame because the Mages Guild is set up to be something really exciting. It could have been a veritable Harry Potter experience within a game, and instead it squanders its own design by making the players do something that the local squire with zero magical experience could do by the end of the day. But at any rate, after getting the approval of each sect, you make your way off to the Wizard 101 campus and get told that you have to purchase a wand at Ollivander's so that you too can be a real wizard. This could have again been a unique and fun experience by choosing which kind of wood you wanted for your staff, maybe even to the degree of being quizzed about your motives and aspirations as an up-and-coming mage in the guild, which then affects your staff's properties. The quest giver even tells you that you have to choose carefully, like you're going to be presented several options from either wood giver. Instead, the game just blows it again, because after you're done fighting through the harsh wasteland of mudcrabs and timberwolves, you're greeted with the friendly faces of about 400 necromancers in a cave. After mowing your way through the Zool army, you get the very last chunk of balsa wood from this glow-stick-infused coffin, and then you skip back to the Chamber of Sages so that the old man there can tell you that those punk necromancer kids are over the line. Then you get to answer a few questions about what you want your staff to be like, and this guy carves a different smiley face into it depending on which route you want to take.
Your staff will give you power over ice.
I think the thing that really sets me off about the Mages Guild in this game is how patronizing it seems to be. And if the way I interpreted the quests was done intentionally, then I definitely have to give Bethesda credit here for evoking this kind of response from me. But every early to mid-mission feels like you're nothing but an errand boy in this guild. From gaining entry to the first few quests, everything is set up in a way where you feel like you're someone who has an internship at the big-time office. I think it's honestly how important everything is presented to you as. It always seems like only you can take care of the problem. Your second quest after getting your staff is a full-fledged member of the Mages Guild, involves you being lied to by the council, and using your ignorance to extract information from a vampire count.
We will continue to monitor the situation, but I assure you, we will make no further attempts to mislead you.
Then you're rewarded for your efforts with an advancement in rank. Oh, we're sorry we lied to you about the dangerous situation we put you in, but here's a nice treat for being such a good boy. Also, I'm pretty sure you could use a break after all that scary business, so we're gonna send you off to these ruins so you can help. It's absurdly hard to tell whether or not the writers of these quests wanted them to seem so disingenuous to the player, but it's all I felt when I was pushing through them. Questing in the Mages Guild from this point forward tends to drag on and on. You're always at odds with the necromancer threat, doing your best to gain information and thwart them. There are a few quests that almost break from this formula, such as retrieving an artifact from the Ayleid ruins, but even that falls flat in terms of unique fun. It just seems so unbelievably stupid that none of these experienced members can figure out the most mind-bogglingly simple tasks. This one with the ruins involves you translating 4 ancient inscriptions with a journal and then using 4 different spells from a chest, all of which are on site in the ruins. These mages are sitting here trying to shove the triangle blocks through the square holes and wondering why it's not working.
It's magical, we know that much. Best to play it safe. No complex magic. Stick to basic spells with single effects.
How haven't you figured this out yet?
What a waste of my talents.
What talent?
Don't get me wrong, when you do finally manage to somehow solve the Dark Souls of puzzle rooms, you get to explore the ruins filled with undead and traps as your reward. I have to admit, I actually did enjoy the trap portion of the dungeon, but boy am I tired of underground basements packed with undead. You continue through several layers of go here, report back quests, all of which tend to have some sort of cave-like exploration. It's probably my biggest gripe with how these quests are structured. It's as if Bethesda decided, alright boys, necromancers will be the enemy. Where do necromancers reside? Caves. Boom.
Vampire Cave. Demon Cave. Wraith House. Mage Cave? No! Necromancer Cave!
As I kept advancing through the ranks, I realized another issue I had with the story of the Mages Guild. It wasn't just the cave exploration I was being sent on, it was the way the Mages Guild and Council are painted. Time and time again, these people who are supposed to be some of the most wisest and intelligent citizens of Cyrodiil are constantly surprised, tricked, and baffled by some of the silliest or most predictable events. I initially felt like they were being disingenuous, but as I progressed, I felt like they were just plain naive. I think the second to last quest perfectly encapsulates how simple everything is in this guild. I swing good with axe. You want near door or far away? I do good range magic spell. You want right here or way over there?
Okay, but that puts me farther away from the group.
That's the point!
There's about as much complexity to these choices as deciding to drink when you're thirsty. I know I'm reading too much into a questline, but I really feel like this stuff could have played out better. Finally, you're tasked with taking on the HNIC. That's Head Necromancer in charge. This part's actually pretty cool because the old Archmage actually gives himself the suck so that you can resist the wily charms of the hottest necromancer in Cyrodiil.
You will be impervious to his attempts to enthrall you.
I think if that guy knew how easy it was to get the Archmage to sacrifice himself like that, he'd have sent in an undercover guy a long time ago. I mean, realistically, I went from apprentice to Archmage in about a week or so, but either way. You sprint through the final cave, and fight the most underwhelming hooded boy you've ever seen. Then you trek back out and forget to take your gray fox mask off.
You're the Grey Fox. I'll make...
And thank God that autosave saved before you travel. I will say that the end reward to doing all this stuff is actually pretty cool, because you get to design your own spells in the Archmage's quarters. I finally got to design my 65 mana restoration spell so that I can wipe out my mana bar every time I heal once. And there you have it, a proper Archmage for the Mages Guild.
I hold the key, and I will die defending it.
My romp through Oblivion's guild system concluded with the one that I thought that I was going to like the least. The Fighters Guild. The first half to 3/4 of this guild's quest give you about the same motivation and feeling of depth as Skyrim's Radiant quest system. Its only redeeming quality during these beginning quests is the somewhat humorous scenarios that come up every here and there.
I hate my life.
Like helping a woman protect her pet rats even though it sounded like the rats were the problem. Or helping this Melvin protect his chastity.
Perhaps I should speak with Mother first.
A lot of the characters you encounter are the saving grace of this guild.
How may I persist you?
But the actual contract objectives feel about as interesting as Preston Garvey's homestead safari.
Good to see you working hard.
Another settlement has sent word that they need our help.
Overall, the Fighters Guild tends to take all the basic constructs of the game and enhance them in a more complex, but overall less fulfilling way. It has what I like to call advanced caves, i.e., caves with more traps and winding corridors. These were interesting for about 3 minutes, but I actually felt like they belonged more in the Thieves Guild questline. Also, they didn't have a ton of variants and made me feel like I was navigating a discount Sense fortress most of the time. Beyond advanced caves, the Fighters Guild also likes to make you do some advanced exploration. Advanced exploration consists of normal exploration, but with the addition of an NPC to slowly lead you through Cyrodiil as your tour guide. Because if there's one thing that every game needs, it's unskippable escort missions, and the Fighters Guild makes good on that endeavor on Oblivion's behalf. All that being said, my interest did begin to perk up a bit when it was time to start doing something about the Blackwood Company. The rival mercenaries were renowned for converting the Fighters Guild members and stealing their contracts, as well as having the reputation to do anything to complete a contract. In one of them, you're sent off to a mine to figure out what's become of the Guildmaster's son, who was sent in to clear the mine of trolls. When you arrive, you're met with body after body of the Fighters Guild members, and one Blackwood Company member's body. It's a chilling scene, and it's actually one of the few caves that I have to give credit to in terms of design. You see, if you're not paying attention to the map, your instinct is to head deeper and deeper in a straight line, thus discovering more corpses along the way. When you hit the dead end, you realize there's a hairpin turn that's super easy to miss as you walk by it, which leads to the rest of the cave. It's a quest I really enjoyed a lot, and the ending of it has you thumbing through a journal that details the invasion of the rival guild, and their slaying of nearly all the Fighters Guild members. Cold and dying, the son of the guildmaster writes his final words as the trolls close in on his location. I loved this narrative, and it made me wish for more interesting quests like it. I'd have actually really loved a choice between these two rival factions. On one side you have the bright and virtuous mercenaries who try to stay on the up and up, and on the other hand you have the insidious and seedy ones who are willing to get their hands dirty. That good versus evil narrative might have actually been really fun, and I think this kind of decision making is something that Oblivion really lacks in pretty much all of its quest lines. There never really is a good or evil choice, it's just one or the other and you follow it without question. Either way, when you finally become a champion of the Fighters Guild, outranking your old bosses in the process, you're called upon to end the Blackwood Company once and for all. These are probably my second favorite quests in the game, right behind the Dark Brotherhood. They actually almost make up for all the filler in the Fighters Guild. You're tasked with the infiltration of the Blackwood Company to see how they operate. Upon being initiated, you're told to drink the sap of a hist tree that has been smuggled from Morrowind. You're told that all company members drink this sap before missions. So you drink it and come to consciousness at a small village where goblins have overran everything. You begin slaying the goblins, which die in one hit. You're then told to check all the houses for more that are hiding. After clearing the village, you pass out again and wake up in your ex-guildmate's house. You're then told to go check the village just in case, and surprise surprise, you've brutally murdered the entire village, more or less. It's an awesomely chilling story that paints the Blackwood members as either sinister addicts or naively manipulated mercs who were just happy with any sort of work.
No, the entire town. I realize you must be disgusted with yourself.
Walking up to the company's guild hall for the final confrontation feels perfect. And your quest for vengeance and justice makes fighting feel fueled with a very palpable excitement. After mowing down member after member, and these two Native Americans, you then jam the machine that keeps the history alive with large pipes, which destroys the machinery. For a game with very few cinematics, this definitely felt like a cutscene. It was a spectacular ending to the guild which made me wish for more like it. I know I ragged on the Fighters Guild pretty hard at the beginning, but can you blame me? It's really a case of less is more for me, because a huge chunk of the guild's quest felt like filler. On one hand, there were some pretty humorous moments to fill in the gaps, but on the other, those moments were sandwiched between caves and dungeons en masse.
I was just getting used to being retired. You can see how good my painting is getting.
With the guilds out of the way, I felt pretty obligated to finish the main storyline at this point. So your first order of business is recovering the Amulet of Kings. In order to do that, you need information about the cult that's pitted against you, which involves you recovering books. You're then taken on a tour of the sewers by my hero Boris. I'm not sure why this game seems to have been created with the idea that people love getting the runaround in mazes, but it's definitely a trend that I've taken issue with immensely. Anyways, the books give you info on where your next clue lies, and you follow the breadcrumb trail to a cave full of cultists. You present yourself as a new initiate and follow their orders. Or don't, and mow them all down. I chose both. Then you get another book, but this one's cooler.
Looks like we've got a thief in our midst.
How dare you steal from me?
You bring the book back to Martin, who gets to work deciphering it. In the meantime, you're sent to deal with some spies.
I do not fear death.
After Martin deciphers part of the book, he tells you that you need to bring back a Daedric artifact. This was actually a pretty interesting way to handle a quest, because it's literally asking you for any Daedric artifact. The quest points you to where you could find one, but if you wanted to, you could walk to any shrine around the map, extract its artifact, and bring it back to Martin. After this, it's everyone's favorite time again, Oblivion Gate closing time. You're to lead the Bruma Town Guard through the gate that's opened outside their city. At least, if you want to take 30 minutes to fight everything, you can lead them through it. If you want to be a total badass, you can run through the whole thing in 4 minutes while Bird wades through lava outside. The main quest then splits into 2 different quests that need to be completed. One consists of bringing Martin ancient armor derived from a divine, and the other is rallying the other cities in defense of Bruma. The armor one is the equivalent of ordering a Coke and getting a Pepsi with glass shards in it instead of ice cubes. I think if I had done the main questline from the beginning, I wouldn't have minded it as much. But my god, these undead catacombs. At least the whole Dead Blades thing was pretty neato. Anyways, remember when I said you had to do the whole Oblivion Gate thing 8 more times? Well, that's what the other quest is, or at least the biggest chunk of them are involved in it. It's optional, but I decided to do it just to show how tedious they are, and because apparently I hate myself.
With an open Oblivion Gate...
I cannot spare any soldiers.
I don't have any men to spare. I cannot spare any soldiers. I need all my soldiers here.
With Anvil
Skingrad, Breville, Leonie,
Cheydinhall,
Coral.
safe for the moment.
I will likewise help you.
I can now
Aid in
gladly
the
send
defense
aid
of
to Bruma.
I hate this quest. It's boring. It's monotonous. It's the same thing over and over again with a new coat of red paint each time. After every city is done letting you perform the entirety of their defense for them, they agree to lend you men for the big showdown. Which, let's be honest, you just closed 7 gates by yourself. Do you really need these men? Basically, they make the big Oblivion Gate a lot more manageable. After you go get the Welkin Stone in the Goblins vs. Zombies cave, you deliver it to Martin, and he informs you that the last piece of the puzzle is going to stem from allowing the cultists to open the biggest and beefiest O-Gate this side of Cyrodiil. This is one of the only times that I really wish the game was created more recently. This whole fight is really cool to look at. Don't get me wrong, it's a bit underwhelming combat-wise, but that's the same as always. But watching different Oblivion Gates pop up followed by this massive one is a really awesome sight. This is the only timed quest in the game, making it particularly stressful when doing it the correct way. But after you get over the tremendous siege engine barreling towards the gate's entrance at a blistering pace, it may surprise you to find out that this is in fact another Oblivion Gate. Does this look familiar? That's because I'm replaying old footage. Nah, I'm kidding, this gate has the same damn tower I've climbed like 8 times now. After grabbing the biggest sigil stone, you defeat the biggest siege engine in the biggest gate, and then you move on to Paradise, which is pretty damn cool. The change in scenery is a welcome one, and it's some of the more interesting level layout and voice acting in the game, barring the Shivering Isles.
Would you confront me in battle, or offer me service? Service.
I actually had a lot of fun with the caves here. And the contrast between Paradise's exterior and its inner workings filled with tortured souls is very enjoyable.
Please! No! No!
You finally meet the man in charge, and after hearing about his motives, you begin your fight. It isn't anything super epic or grandiose, but the before and after makes up for it, as the paradise that Mankar Cameron built crumbles with his body. Upon your return, you begin the last leg of your journey to light the dragonfires and prevent Mehrunes Dagon from invading Tamriel once and for all. This plan is immediately halted when he comes through anyways, along with his Hell Army. This is a really cool part of the game that ushered in its finale. Watching the sky go red over the Imperial City and Daedra pouring into it is a pretty imposing sight. I do have to take a bit of issue with the convenience of the biggest demon boy crossing over literally minutes before the dragonfires are lit, but it is what it is. Once you finally battle your way through the city, you take Martin's septum to the Temple of the One, where he crushes the Amulet of Kings, which turns him into a big beefin' light dragon. He then fights Mehrunes Dagon while you kinda hang out and look at them. It's an underwhelming finish in terms of gameplay, but it's a cool battle to watch with an ending that leaves Mehrunes obliterated and Martin petrified as a monument to his sacrifice. You're hailed as the champion of Cyrodiil, and given a custom-made armor set to commemorate your deeds. I actually felt a little swell of pride at this honorific. It's odd because I've done a lot of complaining about the amount of samey stuff that's in this game, which encompasses the main questline as well. But I feel like after drudging through all those hellscapes and saving everyone's asses multiple times, that recognition is pretty welcome. It isn't necessarily the greatest exaltation, but it could have just as easily been a, "You did it, good job," and you walking away like nothing ever happened. I initially started the early concept of this video as a Skyrim vs. Oblivion comparison. But as I collected the massive amount of footage from Oblivion, I realized that trying to cut down my exact impressions and feelings into a video that didn't take up an hour and a half wouldn't be a fair assessment. I initially stopped my Dark Brotherhood progression after killing the other family members, and I stopped the Fighters Guild questline after becoming a defender, just to save time and make a hasty comparison between the guilds in each game. And if I had done that, I would have missed out on some of my favorite quests in the entire game. Overall, I would say that Oblivion is a game worth visiting or revisiting. Is it as good as I remember it being? Honestly, it isn't. There were a lot of times when it was much better than I remembered it being. But most of the time, it was worse. It doesn't mean it's not worth playing, but while it hasn't aged as horribly as some people might say, it definitely has aged when compared to newer games from this decade. A lot of quests, maps, and characters are very lazy, copy and pasted, and obviously filler. The training system is a bit fickle, and NPC banter is just plain odd.
I don't have time for you.
I don't have time for you. Hello. Welcome to Castle Coral.
The Oblivion Gates system as a whole is this tremendous waste of potential. A lot of tasks are tedious and boring and overall unfulfilling. But in the end, it's still an Elder Scrolls game. And I still got a solid 50 hours out of it while doing this review. Did I want to stop after 30? I'd be lying if I said no, but I'm still fond of this game in the end. And I'll always appreciate it for what it is. Thanks for watching my 45-minute rant about an 11-year-old game. As with all my videos, this one took way too long to make and matches no other content on the channel. I'll likely be moving on to another bugs and glitches video next, like my Sid Meier's Civilization one. Until then, I'll be streaming over on Twitch semi-occasionally. I'll be gone on vacation until mid-June. Thanks again.
Ta! Come visit again, or I'll pluck out your eyes!